Romans flogged her in public. They stripped a queen naked and beat her while her own people watched. Then they took her daughters, girls, not yet women, and assaulted them brutally right in front of her. They took her kingdom. They took her wealth. They took her dignity. And they assumed she was finished. They assumed wrong. Within months, Boudicca raised an army of 100,000 soldiers, farmers, blacksmiths, mothers, an entire civilization that had been told to kneel but chose to stand. She marched south, and she didn't just fight the Romans, she erased them. Colchester burned to the ground, London burned to the ground, St. Albans burned to the ground. 3 cities, tens of thousands dead, the most powerful empire on earth, humiliated by a woman they thought they'd already broken. And for one terrifying moment, Rome almost lost Britain entirely. But here's what no one tells you. Boudicca didn't lose because she wasn't strong enough. She lost because of a single decision, on a single afternoon, on a battlefield the Romans chose. What happened in those final hours would haunt this little island in the west of Europe for 2,000 years. But to understand how a widowed queen brought an empire to its knees, we need to go back to the deal that started it all. Before Rome broke her, Boudicca was royalty. Her husband, Prasutagus, was king of the Iceni, which was a Celtic tribe in what is now Norfolk, eastern England. The Iceni were not savages, so to speak. They were wealthy. They minted their own coins, and they bred horses that Roman officers envied. Their land stretched across fertile plains, thick forests, and coastlines rich with trade. And Prasutagus had made a deal. When Rome invaded Britain in 43 AD, not every tribe fought. Some, like the Iceni, negotiated. Prasutagus agreed to rule as a Roman client king. He kept his throne, his lands, his people's way of life. But in exchange, he accepted Roman authority. It was a compromise, but it worked for 17 straight years. Then Prasutagus did something that should have protected his family forever. He wrote a will. In his will, he wrote that half of his kingdom would go to the Roman Emperor Nero, and then the other half to his 2 daughters. It was a gesture of loyalty and sovereignty. Father's final act to keep his children safe. He died around 60 AD, and Rome showed him exactly what his loyalty was worth. The procurator Catus Decianus arrived with soldiers. He didn't honor the will. He seized everything: the kingdom, the treasury, the estates of Iceni nobles, Roman financiers. Men like Seneca, the great philosopher, called in enormous loans that had been forced on the tribe years earlier. Loans the Iceni never asked for, and when Boudicca stood before them and protested if they made an example of her. A queen, stripped, flogged. Her daughters violated while she watched. Rome didn't just ignore the will. Rome sent a message: you are nothing. But they didn't understand who they were talking to. They were soon going to find out. She didn't grieve quietly. She raised an army. Word spread across the tribal lands like wildfire. The Iceni rallied first every man, every woman old enough to carry a weapon. Then the Trinovantes, a neighboring tribe who had watched the Romans bulldoze their capital to build a temple to a dead emperor. Then others, tribe after tribe, grievance after grievance, falling in behind a woman with whip scars on her back and murder in her eyes. By the time Boudicca marched south, she commanded a force ancient sources estimate at 100,000. Her first target was Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, the Roman capital of Britain, and it was barely defended. The veterans who lived there had grown complacent. They had no walls. They had dismantled the town's defenses years earlier because they believed no one would dare. Boudicca's horde hit Colchester like a wave. The Roman inhabitants barricaded themselves inside the Temple of Claudius, a marble monument to the emperor who had conquered their land. They held out for 2 days. In the 3rd day, the temple fell. Every Roman inside was killed. The town was burned so thoroughly that archaeologists today still find a thick red layer of scorched debris beneath modern Colchester. 17 centuries later, you can still touch the ash, and it gets worse. The 9th Legion, Rome's nearest military force, marched to intercept Boudicca. Elite infantry, professional soldiers, the backbone of Rome and Britain. She destroyed them. The infantry was virtually annihilated. The commander barely escaped with his cavalry. Rome had just lost its capital in Britain, and its nearest legion, to a woman they had tried to break with a whip. London was next on the hit list. When word reached Londinium that Boudicca was coming, the city didn't prepare to fight. It prepared to die. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was 400 kilometers away in Wales, where he was destroying a Druid stronghold on the island of Anglesey. He raced back. He saw London, and he made a calculation that would define him forever. He abandoned it. Suetonius looked at the city, the merchants, the families, the civilians who had built their lives under Roman protection, and he decided it wasn't worth saving. He didn't have enough men. If he fought Boudicca in London, he would lose, and Rome would lose Britain entirely. So he marched his army north, and he left London to burn. Boudicca showed no mercy. Londinium was destroyed, completely. The Roman historian Tacitus wrote that the rebels had no interest in taking prisoners or selling slaves. They wanted slaughter. The archaeological record confirms it. The red ash layer found beneath the streets of modern London sits exactly where Boudicca's fires burned 19 centuries ago. Still there, Verulamium. St. Albans fell next, same fate, burned to nothing. In the space of weeks, Boudicca had destroyed 3 major Roman settlements and killed an estimated 70,000 people, annihilated a legion, and driven the Roman governor into retreat. The Emperor Nero reportedly considered withdrawing from Britain altogether. One woman, with scars on her back, had nearly expelled the most powerful empire in human history from an entire island. But Suetonius wasn't retreating. He was choosing his ground, and the place he chose would turn Boudicca's greatest strength into her greatest weakness. Suetonius chose a narrow valley, possibly somewhere in the Midlands, the exact site still debated. He placed his legionaries at one end, forest at their back, steep slopes on either side. Boudicca's 100,000 had to funnel toward him, down a bottleneck. Numbers didn't matter anymore, discipline did. The Roman lines held. The Celtic charge, furious, chaotic, brave beyond measure, broke against a wall of shields and short swords. When the Britons tried to retreat, they couldn't. Their own supply wagons, parked behind them in a vast semicircle, blocked the escape. The rout became a massacre. Tacitus claimed 80,000 Britons died. The Romans, 400. Boudicca survived the battle, but not by much. The ancient sources disagree on what happened next. Tacitus says she took poison. Dio says she fell ill and died. No one knows where she was buried. No one has ever found her grave. But here is the thing about Boudicca. She lost. The Romans stayed in Britain for another 350 years. The rebellion was crushed. The Iceni were broken. And yet, today, a bronze statue of Boudicca stands beside the Houses of Parliament in London. A queen in a war chariot, spear raised, overlooking the city she once burned to the ground. The Romans built an empire, but the woman they flogged became immortal.